Today, we're going to talk about what are profit expectations you should expect going into the new year on every single car share platform or form of rentals. A lot of good information in this video. I would definitely recommend watching all the way to the end. I'm going to go through every single option you have in terms of car share platforms as well as private rentals. And I think that this will definitely give you a lot of good information going into the new year, especially if you are looking to diversify your car rental income streams as well as just getting into the car rental game in general. So first I would start off with Turo. So on Turo, I would say there's a good amount of variance with Turo. A lot of it obviously depends on which level of insurance you are using with them, whether it be the 60/40, 90/10, and there's a couple of options in between. If you're working with exotics can typically do anywhere from $1,500 to $2,000 a day in rentals. That's just pure gross revenue, what you see after Turo takes their take. But what I would say is that it's just not as common to rent those cars out, and there's a lot of headaches with insurance. Obviously, that's another video for another time. But what I would tell you is that that model of car sharing and car rentals can be very lucrative. If you're working with a luxury car on Turo, maybe like a BMW or a Mercedes, you can easily get up to $2,000 a month in gross revenue from Turo, especially if you're using the 80 or 85 plan with them. That's typically what I see amongst my clients. And then if you have something that's just more base level sedan, I would tell you something like a Toyota Camry or something just a little more simple. In those scenarios, you'll typically make around $1,000 to $1,200 a month, probably gross revenue through Turo. I would say that's probably pretty realistic. And keep in mind with Turo, it's just not as location sensitive, but I would say that most people on Turo have the most success at airports. So that's definitely a very common thing, is to put cars at airports, but you can put them throughout suburbs as well. Before I keep going, click below, grab the 5 things you must do before starting a car rental business. That also includes the car share growth guide, which gives you a city by city breakdown of which car share platforms are strongest in your area. Lots of great information in there. Also, don't forget to give this channel a like and a subscribe. I always appreciate that. Secondly, let's talk about Getaround. When it comes to Getaround, I would say that I really wouldn't do Getaround unless you are in one of their strong cities. I would say that's any city that's like Chicago, Boston, New Jersey, Philadelphia, DC, Atlanta, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Seattle, and probably Dallas. What I would say about Getaround is that if you are in a Drive with Uber city that is eligible for Drive with Uber on their platform, your results are going to be significantly better on Getaround. So if you have a car that's in Drive with Uber and that car is getting rented out on a regular basis, it has an occupancy rate of around 90% or plus throughout the month, you can definitely expect to see revenues around $1,600, $1,700, maybe $1,500 around there. And now that they are starting to beta test the 70/30 split and the 80/20 split, it's definitely going to be sitting around that $1,500 to $1,700 range a month. If you want to get kind of like just a base level car, like a Toyota Camry or Corolla or something that an Uber driver would like, and you want to target Uber drivers, I would definitely look at Drive with Uber cities initially for Getaround. That is definitely a great option that is pretty hands-off. It's pretty easy to deal with. The insurance situation is easy. And in those Drive with Uber markets, they do very well. I'm seeing that right now with my own fleet in Boston. We are under the 80/20 profit split right now, and a good handful of our cars that are on the Drive with Uber program are just rocking out right now. So I would definitely recommend that if you are doing Getaround. If you're working with them just on a normal car share basis, so no Uber drivers, just normal retail renters, your monthly expectations for profit in terms of gross revenue, not after expenses, but I'd say gross revenue, you're going to see probably more around the $800 to $1,000 a month on the car share side of things. So like I said in the previous week, rideshare is really where it's at these days in terms of getting those numbers up to what we really should be getting each month. But you can make money with car share drivers, obviously, and they don't put as much mileage on the car, but I will say that it's just not going to be nearly as much money. Next, let's get into HighCar. A HighCar, as I've mentioned, is probably on its way out. That is definitely a very strong rumor I'm hearing right now. It's likely going to get morphed into the Getaround system. They are setting up a long-term renter system on their own software. But what I would say is in the near term, HighCar is still available probably for another good 3 or 4 months, I would say. If you're going to use HighCar in 2025, I would say that you will probably make, after all their fees, around $28 to $33 a day. And usually on those rentals, You will get long-term renters. There's a lot of long-term renters on HighCar. That's obviously the reason why they are the most popular for that reason. Otherwise, probably nobody would use them, but they have those long-term renters, which in my opinion is really the gold in this industry. Because they have the long-term renters, you can pretty much count on a very high occupancy rate each month when you are working with HighCar. Obviously, when you talk to a driver and you say to them, hey, how long are you looking to take this car? Typically, you want to find somebody who is looking to take the car at least 3 months or more. Typically on HighCar, it's pretty straightforward. You're really going to make around 30 bucks a day. So around 900, 950 a month. It's pretty standard with them. That is after their fees, but obviously before any other fees that you have to deal with, like a car payment or repair or whatever. So that's gross revenue to you. Next, let's talk about private rental agreement. If you've been following my channel, you know that I am a big proponent of long-term private rental agreements. I am not a big fan of short-term private rentals. Short-term private rentals, you can typically rent the car for 50 to 100 per day, depending on a car. But if it's kind of a just base level type sedan or maybe a Tesla or something like that, that's probably more in line with those expectations. And you may rent it maybe 3 days a week. So you do the math on that. But like I said, with short-term rentals, I've never done short-term rentals because I just think it's too much of a headache. It's challenging from an insurance standpoint. You have to spend a lot of money with marketing. You have to find new renters constantly. To me, that's just not what I want to do. I'd rather find long-term renters and let them drive it over time. Typically with long-term private renters who are looking to take a car for Uber driving, you can usually reliably charge $400 to $500 per week. So you're coming in at $1,600 to $2,000 a month in terms of just gross revenue. Now, on that higher side, $500 a week, I would say that you would need like a brand new Tesla for that. That's not going to require any gas, or maybe is within a couple of years. But I would say that in that scenario, really only are those nicer cars eligible for $500 a week. $400, $425 a week is probably more on par with your standard 2 to 3 year old Camry, Corolla, Honda Accord, something like that. That's going to be your solid type Uber car for a driver. I know many of you have told me over the years, oh, you know, Hertz or Enterprise, they're offering rentals for $250, $300 a week. Typically those cars go in 2 seconds. It's very hard to find those cars. I've heard of those. I've had drivers tell me about that before. What I would say is that if anyone tells you, hey, it's $300 a week over at Enterprise, just tell them, go get that car, because usually it's gone by the time they tell you about it. You also have to be careful if you're going to do private rentals with long-term drivers. Do not underprice the car, because in many markets, what they'll do is they'll take your car, and if you're charging them like $300 a week, they will turn around and flip that car to another renter for $450 a week, and they will bag $150 a week just on the arbitrage. I know that sounds ridiculous, but it happens. I've had this happen to me. I've had this happen to other friends. It's actually relatively common. So I'd say on a long-term private rental, $400 to $500 a week is pretty accurate, and I would stick with that range. Obviously, you can do different things to incentivize good behavior and payment. Like if they pay 3 times or 4 weeks in a row on time, you can not give them $100 back. I always think that's a good incentive to get that behavior in terms of payment on time, and it also gives them something to think about moving forward with regards to just working towards a goal. Also, you can do rent to own deals with long-term private renters. That's also another great way to incentivize good behavior. Overall in this industry, I would say that on the high side, you should be pulling in about $1,600 to $2,000 a month gross revenue per car, and on the low side, probably around $700 to $1,000, whether you're talking about rideshare or card share. But obviously, there's a lot of variables in this situation. The type of car, if it's a luxury, if it's exotic, if it's an old car, there's a lot of variables with regards to how much money you're going to make. Obviously, a nicer car is going to make more money. But at the same time, too, you always have to consider the payment on the car, or if it's owned in outright cash. If there is a large payment on the car, that many times is challenging for the owner. I would recommend not going above $600 or $700 a month in a payment or loan on a car. That's all I've got for you today. Drop a comment below if you have any questions or thoughts. Before I go, click below, grab the 5 things you must do before starting a car rental business. I will catch you in the next episode. Thank you.